Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at building this ladies Datejust style watch for a very special somebody. So starting off, we have our super jubilee style bracelet, followed by our 26mm case with a fluted bezel, our NH05 movement, a few spring bars for the bracelet, our silver sunburst dial with diamond markers, and last but not least, our handset. So getting off to a rough start here, I failed to realize that there's a piece of tape holding this plastic container together, so I use a screwdriver to cut it open. And believe me, this is not the only mishap to befall me during this watch build, but we'll get to those a little bit later. Removing the movement from the packaging, I can really grasp how small this thing really is. This is my first time working with an NH05, and I didn't quite realize just how tiny everything was going to be. So in Wax issue number 2, my movement holder is not small enough to hold this movement properly. I do my best to get it in and clamp it down. Though it's not super secure, it should be secure enough to not move while it's on the Timegrapher. Off screen, I fully wound up the movement, and I'll go ahead here and place it into the Timegrapher. We start off here with some pretty ugly numbers, plus 29 seconds a day. However, 320 degrees of amplitude is looking pretty good. What's weird is that the movement then jumps to plus 41 seconds a day before dropping back down to plus 10 seconds a day. Very uncommon. So I'm happy with where the beat error is at. Obviously I'd like that to be 0.0, however 0.2 is just fine. So I go here to try to slow the movement down a little bit. But that goes as bad as it can, and now we're running at plus 81 seconds per day. Not a huge deal though, all I need to do is move the pin in the opposite direction of the first adjustment. And here you can see we're back to where we started, and honestly this is where I should have stopped because it only gets worse from here. So I make another slight adjustment here, and we get a quick flash of plus 11 seconds per day on the Timegrapher. However, you can see that the lines are sloping downward, meaning that the movement is losing time. You can also see that the beat error has jumped from 0.2 milliseconds all the way up to 1.8 milliseconds, which is way too high. Obviously, I can't let the watch run like this, so I make another adjustment to try to smooth out these numbers. I'm going to save you, the viewer, some time and just let you know that no matter what I did over the next hour, the movement did not want to cooperate and I could never get it regulated. Part of me thinks that this movement experienced some kind of great shock during the shipping process, which damaged it, causing the wild up and down nature of the Timegrapher numbers. With this watch being more of a fashion choice than a timekeeping device for my girlfriend, I decided to continue to move forward with the build, order another movement, and when it arrived, to do a movement swap. With that said, I'm going to cut off the Timegrapher portion of the video here, and we'll move on to the next step. And for those of you who thought the rest of this build was going to be smooth sailing after the mishaps of the Timegrapher, you are incorrect. For those of you who have seen any of my previous videos, you'll know that the NH style movements typically hold the dial in place using 2 dial feet. This is not the case for dials made for the NH05 movement, which only come with 1 dial foot. Additionally, the larger movements hold the dial in place with just friction on the 2 dial feet. However, with the NH05, there's a small lever on the back of the movement that needs to be pulled out before the dial is placed in and then closed once it's in place. The biggest issue I found with this is that that lever does not securely hold the dial in place and allows it to move around slightly. You'll see throughout the rest of the video the dial shifting around, and every once in a while the date and the date window are misaligned. This is not the end of the world, as once the dial and movement are housed in the case, they are held firmly in place. So with the dial attached to the movement, albeit loosely, it's time to move on to setting the hands. The movement has been set to midnight and the date has just flicked over. And much like the NH35 movement featured in other videos, we're starting off with the hour hand, though this one being a much tinier hour hand. The process, however, remains the same. Place the hour hand over the pinion, line it up with one of the hour markers, and then press it into place using the hand setting tool. And again, I like to use plastic tweezers for this part of the build, just so I mitigate the chances of me scratching the dial. You can see here I've moved away from my favorite gray tip, and instead I'm using the red tip. This is just due to the fact that the hand is much smaller than the NH35 hands. Giving the hand a few gentle presses down before making sure that it's aligned horizontally to the dial. And then rotating the hand all the way around the dial just to make sure that there's no clearance issues. Which for once is actually pretty easy because the hour hand does not extend over the hour markers. And of course, the last thing to check is when the date flicks over, which looks like it's right about midnight, so we're good on that front. I'm happy with when the date flicks over and the overall alignment of the hand, so I'm just going to break out the hand setting tool one more time, give it one final push into position. And after that final push, just want to bring the hand all the way around the dial, again to make sure that there's no clearance issues and just to recheck when the date flicks over. So with everything looking good on the hour hand, it's time to move on to the minute hand, which of course has the same steps. Place the hand over the pinion, line it up with the 12 o'clock marker, and then press it into place with the hand setting tool. However, frequent viewers of the channel will know that the minute hand is my mortal enemy, and I often struggle with this hand much more than the seconds hand. Looks like I missed it by a little bit. Nothing to worry about. Just using the plastic tweezers to realign it with the 12 o'clock marker, and then breaking out the hand setting tool, and we'll push it gently on to see where we're at. Almost immediately when checking for clearance, I can see that the minute hand is skipping across the top of the diamond hour markers. So using the hand setting tool yet again, I'm just going to readjust the minute hand to get better clearance. And look at that, we're looking good. I'm going to wind the hands all the way in a 24-hour cycle, and it looks like the date is flicking over right around 12 o'clock. So with that, we can move on to final hand, the second hand. I'm excited to set the second hand because, as you can see, I'm using a new technique. Typically, what I've done in the past is hold the second hand in place over the pinion with the piece of Rodico, and then with the hand setting tool, press it onto the pinion. Though this time around, I've decided to put a bit of Rodico into the hand setting tool, then use that to pick up the second hand, and then place it over the pinion and press it in. You'll see I struggled with the first couple of attempts, but on this one, I'm able to get it onto the pinion. It releases from the Rodico and begins to tick away immediately. Overall, I like this new technique, and I believe I'll be using it going forward. This hobby is no different than any other hobby. New parts become available, new techniques are seen, and you bring them in and adapt your skill set to use them. And with the hand set, we're finished with the movement for now, and I can look to getting the case ready. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that I'm actually building this watch for my girlfriend, so I thought this would be a great opportunity to introduce her to the channel and quiz her on her watch knowledge. Now I will warn, we had to record this in a different location and at a different distance from the microphone, so the audio is going to sound a little bit different. So without further ado, please welcome Jessica to the channel.
Hi everybody, I'm Jessica.
So I figured I would have you on the video and just ask you some easy, moderate, and hard general knowledge watch questions. So starting off, please name as many brands of watches as you can.
Oh no. Let's see. Rolex, Cartier,
Okay.
not Indica, what is it? Invicta?
Invicta.
Swatch. Invicta.
Swatch is a great one. Any more?
G-Shock.
Okay. Technically Casio, but it's a good start. Kind of on the lower end type of watches, but okay. Moving on. Which country is most famous for its luxury watchmaking industry?
Switzerland?
Very good. What is the main difference between a quartz and a mechanical watch?
This is not, hold on. Quartz is not asking about like the background of the dial, right?
No.
Like not a quartz dial. Okay, then I'm gonna say mechanical, you have to wind it.
Okay.
And a quartz is like automatic, like it winds itself when you move.
Ah, very close. A mechanical watch you do have to wind. An automatic watch is a mechanical watch that has an automatic winding system. A quartz watch is a watch that runs off of a battery.
Oh, okay.
Next question, we're going back to a brand. Which watch brand is often associated with the James Bond franchise, as well as the Apollo missions to the moon?
I'm gonna get disowned because I'm gonna get this wrong.
Who's gonna disown you?
My dad. Can I get a hint? What's the first letter?
O.
Oh, Olympia?
No. I am the alpha and
Oh, Omega.
There you go. We got there. Okay, Jessica. Can you tell me where the crown of the watch is and what its function is?
It's the crown, the dial on the side, the spinny wheel on the side,
I'll accept that, yes.
and you turn it to either wind the watch
Yeah.
or to change the time or the date.
Very good. Let's see how well you can remember things from earlier. What is the function of a watch's rotor?
Does the rotor turn the gears when you turn the crown?
No. It
Is the
does-
rotor, I have a second guess,
Okay.
is the rotor the swingy thing in an automatic watch? When you walk, it winds it?
You've nailed it.
Yes.
Well done. All right, no cheating. Don't look at the questions. Can you name one or more nicknames for a Rolex sport model?
No.
No?
You have a hint?
Some of them are named after sodas.
Oh, okay. Pepsi
Yeah.
and
Oh,
the
bonus
Sprite.
points for more. Oh, Sprite, okay. We're going to be able to name more nicknames than we are actual watch brands.
Cookie Monster,
Yeah. That one actually has two names, if you can get the other one.
Oreo.
No.
Damn it.
It's a family channel, Jessica. Typically, how many hands does a GMT watch have?
4.
And do you know why it has an extra hand?
So you can tell time in another time zone.
Very good. Can you tell me what a perpetual calendar watch does?
It always keeps the date correct no matter what month. Like maybe if one month has 30 days and another one has 31, it knows when to skip, so you don't have to ever change it.
That is one function. Can you give me maybe some more details? You're on the right path.
Does it change the year too?
It does. Perpetual calendar will keep track of the time, the day, the date, the year. It'll track if it's a leap year, all the way up to, I think it's the year 2100. If a watch has a clear dial, a movement with extra material removed, and a case that allows the wearer to see through the watch, they're usually referred to as, and I'll give you a hint, it's related to your favorite holiday.
Ghost watches?
No, another spooky thing.
Skeleton watches.
There you go. Okay, final question here. Can you describe the difference between a chronograph, a flyback chronograph, and a split-second chronograph?
I'll take my best shot. I think a chronograph is a watch that has a stopwatch-like function which is operated by pushes to start, stop, and reset the chronograph hand. A flyback chronograph allows the user to instantly reset and restart the timing function with just a single push or press, useful for things like recording sequential lap times. And a split-second chronograph features an additional split-second hand that can be stopped independently to measure 2 simultaneous events before catching up and resynchronizing with the main chronograph hand when needed.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was an appearance from the lovely Jessica. Overall, I think she did pretty well on the questions. I may or may not have helped her with the last one. Just want to say thank you to Jessica for coming onto the channel. I know it's never easy sitting down and being quizzed, all the while hearing yourself talk over a video. But now, with the test portion of the video over, let's get back to the build. Moving on, I'm going to put this plastic container down and then add a drop of blue Loctite to it. Then taking the crown stem and dipping the end of it into the Loctite before tightening the crown onto it. Again, I only need the bare minimum amount of Loctite here, as any excess has a way of working its way into the spring of the crown and gumming it up. Just using my plastic tweezers here to get a better grip and torque it down just a little bit extra. And with that nice and tight, we can let it sit for a few minutes and let the Loctite dry while we move on to lubing up the gaskets. The silicone grease you see here is made for scuba diving. I figured if it was good enough for the seals on a scuba tank, it was good enough for the seals on any of the watches I build. Using this small applicator I stole from work, please don't tell them, I'm going to lube up the O-ring within the crown tube as well as the one on the caseback. And with the Loctite now dry, I can take that applicator and lube up the O-ring that's within the crown itself. With all the O-rings now lubed up and nice and shiny, I can begin the final assembly of the watch. Starting by taking the crown assembly and threading it through the case and into the movement. Gently pressing it in while turning it clockwise should seat it properly. And it looks to be locked into place here, so just pulling it out to the different crown positions to make sure they're all working. Going to pull the crown all the way out to its final position and just once again check the clearance of the hands and determine when the date is going to flick over. You can finally really start to see the scale of this watch. By no means do I have giant hands, but it looks like I could crush this thing within my fingers. I struggle for a second here getting the crown into the date changing position, but eventually find it and the date is working as it should. And with everything working as it should, I'm going to screw the crown down tightly, flip the whole thing over, and we can put the case back on. Starting off by just placing the case back in place and then tightening it down to finger tight. The rubber cots on my finger actually give a good amount of grip, and I'm able to tighten it down pretty good. To get the case back in nice and snug, I'm going to break out the Caseback tightening tool. I actually had to go and find the dies and find the smallest one in the collection to fit onto this case back. With the crown fully tightened down and the case back now installed, I can look at installing the bracelet to the watch. We ended up going with a jubilee-style bracelet for this watch, which I feel fits it well, as I feel it's more fancy or formal than other alternatives such as an oyster or a presidential style bracelet. Now I do have to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the clasp on this bracelet. Most people would refer to it as a hidden clasp, and when I first received it, I struggled greatly to actually get it open. There's what looks to be a little pull tab on the clasp, which you would think you would just dig your nail into and pull up and it would release. However, it took a great amount of force to do it. I found it much easier to actually put my finger in the back side of the clasp and kind of wiggle it open that way. Opening and closing the clasp has actually worn it in a little bit, and I found that having a little bit of tension on the bracelet makes it easier to open the correct way. Looks like I've got one side of the bracelet now secured into the lugs of the case. So moving on to the next one. It's the same process of most of the other bracelets featured on this channel. Place the spring bar through the end link, place the end link between the lugs, and then snap the spring bar into the divots within the lugs. Sometimes the spring bar doesn't fall right into the divots, so it takes a little bit of adjusting. Just using your spring bar tool, you can push and pull until it snaps into place. One process I did decide to edit out of the video just for time's sake was me removing all of the links from the bracelet. Jessica is a rather tiny girl, and even with all the links removed, the watch still had a good bit of space around her wrist. Of course, with all the links being removed and the watch still being loose on her wrist, this presents a big problem, so I'll probably end up taking it to an actual watchmaker and see if he's able to remove some of the permanent links. You'll see in the video I'm still struggling to get that spring bar into place, but in a few seconds it snaps in, and then all that's left to do is connect the bracelet, and we're done. With the bracelet now secure, all that's left to do is push the pin all the way through these links, secure it into place, and the watch is complete. Fastening these jubilee-style bracelets is a bit complicated, as you have to go through about 5 parts of the link with one pin just to get it to work. Luckily, I was able to rest the links on the folding clasps to line them up easily and just drop the pin right through and secured it into place. And with that final screw tightened down, the watch is complete. Now I have to be honest, I'm not over the moon about how this watch turned out. Of course I like the size, the design, and the shape of it, and I think it works well for Jessica. However, with the movement not being regulated, the dial really not being secure, and the bracelet still being too big, it's really not a complete watch. If this was a commission piece, I'd of course fix all the issues before letting it out my door. But of course, with this going to my girlfriend and me knowing where the watch is going to be at all times, I have the time to order the parts and fix the mistakes later down the line. That said, we're still going to end the video like we always do, with some shots of the watch in natural light. As always, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Instagram at Golden State Watch Shop. And if you're looking to have a watch commissioned for you or your lady, go ahead and reach out to me at goldenstatewatchshop@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.